we go. All right, welcome everyone to the Transforming Teaching and Learning Committee. We have an interesting agenda as always, so we're going to go ahead and call ourselves to order. This meeting has been posted in accordance with the rules for Open Meetings Act. Let me check with Ms. Leffner. Do we have any public comments for agenda topics?
Madam Secretary, there are no requests for public comments for agenda topics.
Thank you so much. All right, so moving on to agenda item 3, we are going to get an update from Dr. Veronica Corton on the day 3 of strategic planning.
Yes, Dr. Reininger, board members, Dr. Neola, and audience. I am here this evening to share an update on day 3 of our strategic planning. So I'll hop right in. So the last time we met, you may recall that we shared with you our draft goals, our draft goal statements, and so those are the ones that are on the screen. We had some time to run it through the stakeholders, run it through our system, and get some feedback from additional stakeholders outside of the Strategic Planning Committee. And so today, I'm here to share with you updated goal statements. So based on some of our feedback from our board and additional layers of our organization, and certainly the SPC, we had a chance to refine some of our goal statements. So on the left-hand side there, you see on that table, it says goals last time we met, and then goals after day 3, and that's after day 3 of strategic planning. So I'm just going to go through big picture, some of the changes that we created. So we now have goal 2, that's all about well-rounded graduates. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into specific result statements. Under goal 3, the biggest change is that you'll see that we are going to focus on individualized and innovative student experiences. But goal 2 started out as student achievement. We now have included college and career readiness. Goal 4 was all about human capital. And just looking at goal 4, you see that we continue to refine that goal. We now aligned it to a lot of the work that we're doing with Holdsworth. So you'll see professional learning and talent management. And then, of course, looking at creating systems around recruitment, retention, and refinement of talent, all aligned to the work that we're doing with Holdsworth. And then that last goal stayed the same. So here are the updated goals at a glance. We went back to resequence some of our goals simply because it had to make sense. So if you look at the goals, we really put students up at the top. So the 2 goals that dealt with student achievement, anything with students, are goals 1 and 2. Of course, the next layer is that you have to have the right human capital in place if you're going to truly make an impact on our students. So that's our goal 3, all about talent management. And then we jump into family and community engagement with goals 4 and 5. So the titles that you see in bold, those are going to be the themes that we're going to work on with our community. Students, human capital, and then jumping out to family and community engagement. So those are the updated goals at a glance. We have also provided a copy of those for you so that you can look at as well. Innovation. We are synonymous with innovation in our district, and around the state, we are these front runners with innovation. So the next part of the presentation, I just want to remind everybody that innovation is seeing what everybody has seen and thinking what nobody has thought. How appropriate that we would bring that to this board. So the reason we're jumping into that quote is because we all know that the goals are wonderful. They're broad statements and they do give us some permission to innovate. But the true magic with a strategic plan is in our specific results statements. We've also provided those to you as well. And I'm just going to go through and just kind of give you an overview of some of the rationale behind these specific results statements. So if you look at specific results statements, we needed to make sure that we were going to stay truly aligned to the work that we're currently doing and the work that we can jump into, the innovation. So if you look at our specific results statements, you'll see that we're really, really looking at individualization and innovation in our classroom and in our teaching practices. One of the latest innovations that we've talked about, of course, is blended learning. And so this allows us to continue with a flavor of our blended learning as well. But truly individualization and innovation are at the heart of these specific result statements. Then we jump into Goal 2. Part of the feedback that we gave you last time and the packet that you'll get today is all about looking at the learner profile. So if you think about the learner profile, we're looking at having resilient learners. That's all part of Goal 2. And if you look at those specific result statements, it speaks to that. We need to obviously have safe learning environments for our students, so we've enveloped that in there based on our feedback. And we also have to really create cultures where our students feel like they belong. So when you think about developing the whole child, Goal 2 will speak to that. In our district, we've spoken about the soft skills and the importance of those soft skills, so that's what Goal 2 will allow us to do. Goal 3, very much aligned with where we want to go as a district and based on the feedback that we received from our stakeholders. The other thing, though, is that we are right in the middle of our partnership with Holdsworth. And as we head into the last year and a half, we've made a lot of headway with Holdsworth. And so Goal 3 also aligns to that work as well. Goal 4, I'm not going to go through too much of this. Here's what I'll say about Goal 4. It's all about removing the barriers to family engagement and empowering our parents so that we educate them on how they can be a true partner in education. And so that's the focus of those specific result statements there. And then, of course, Goal 5. We're not going to do this work alone. Any work we do, we're not going to do alone. But Goal 5 truly opens up our district and brings our community to our district and our district to the community. So if you look at that, that's a big priority with Goal 5. So I know that was a pretty quick overview. It's when you think about the strategic plan, we talk in our beliefs and in some of the calls to action, we talk about the well-being of the organization. And that's not just with students in Goals 1 and 2, it's also well-being with our employees, and that's what we addressed in Goal 3. So you really look at everything in its totality, and it's about, yes, well-being, and also creating an army around student achievement. So looking ahead, we have Day 4 of strategic planning in January. We'll bring our group back together there. And then look forward to having our Team of 8 board workshop on February 7th, where we will bring to you the revisions and the final draft, if you will, of our strategic plan that will be adopted on February 14th. And on the 14th, we thought it would be appropriate and really nice for our board to sit down with our strategic planning committee for dinner that evening, just to see who they are and just to celebrate all the work. Really proud of everything that they've done, and true champions in that group. And I spoke with Dr. Niola earlier, and it's amazing that you think this is a lot of time that they're putting in, and they're asking for more time to be able to put in. So excited about that. And then, of course, we want to make sure that we have a platform to capture the board reflections. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Niola so she can walk us through that.
So we are getting closer and closer to finalizing this strategic plan. And so as we're moving along, we wanted to ensure that we continue to get board feedback. And so a couple of questions here for you all just to reflect on. One of the things that has been critical to the work that we've done in the last 7 or 8 years since we brought on our previous strategic plan has been how that plan has worked to advance the work of our district. And so that first question that you see there, after you look at those goals and specific results, it's just asking the question about this strategic plan and how does this one continue to advance the work? Because if it's just a repetition of what we've done, we're not moving our district forward. And so I ask that as you look at these goals and spend some time looking at these, how will these goals advance our work from where we already are at? The second one, as these goals are written, and so there's still some wordsmithing and things that will have to happen, but as you look at these goals and specific results, do you see these goals giving us permission to innovate? Because that's really what the strategic plan has always given us permission to do, because the feedback came from our community about what they wanted to see. And so as the community has shared with us their vision and goals and what they believe is critical for our school district, do the goals as written, give us permission to innovate. And then overall, just any general feedback that you have on the goals and specific results statements. Hopefully, the last time you gave us a lot of feedback around just things to think about, and hopefully we have captured some of that feedback that you gave us the first time. And so certainly looking forward to see what your thoughts are as we move forward and how we fine tune this plan so that we can bring it back to you in February, and after that, really put it out to our community so that they know what direction we're going as a school district.
And that concludes my part. Thank you.
All right, so do we have any questions for Dr. Corton or next steps for Dr. Noyola,
Just
please?
A quick question. Are you, Veronica and Dr. Noyola, are y'all looking at where we've ended up with our goals and then our specific results statements? Are y'all, give me a scale 1 to 10, how satisfied you are, how excited you are about where we're at? I'd just love to know from y'all's
Sure.
too, just your feedback.
Excitement, I'm at a 10.5. No. Excitement, I would say on the higher end, between 9 and 10. I tend to be super excited about this kind of stuff. I'll tell you, yesterday, we always need to make sure that when you ask for feedback, that feedback has to be reflected in the products that you're creating, right? And so yesterday, really, really proud of our senior team. We took quite a few hours to sit around and look at this. We went right back to our community engagement survey, and we went back to the SWOT analysis. Those three of you that were part of that, you know that we had the community identify strengths, areas of growth, opportunities, and threats. And so in those specific results statements, we wanted to go back and make sure that we captured, yes, the voice, like what are the big themes, what do we have to have in this? And also, what are the opportunities that the community has said, this is what we need to think about? And so the specific results statements, we did refine them from day 3. We added where we needed to add. But with all of that work yesterday, I feel very confident in where we ended up, simply because they're broad enough, lots and lots of innovations that can come from here. And we don't know where we're going to end up with innovation, right? That's the goal. That's the role of our design teams. I just feel like they've given us enough of a structure to move us into many innovations. And we talked about, remember when we were kids and we watched the Jetsons and we thought those things were crazy. Well, we are living the Jetsons today, right? And so that was one of the things that we did yesterday is, what are these Jetsons ideas that you think might come out of this strategic plan? And those were very healthy.
So I'll just add, one of the things that I looked at was our goals and specific results from the last strategic plan. And I was really looking to see, are these different? Are they taking us beyond where we were before? And so I see a lot of that in these goals and specific results. To Veronica's point, they give us permission to innovate. But what I see with this one is that it's not just innovation happening from the district, but it's innovation that now is really going to incorporate our community and our partnerships and so forth, which I don't think was as prevalent in the first one. And so here you read through almost every goal, and there's a component of bringing the community and more partners into this work. And so I think that the more outreach that we have, the more people that we bring into the work, the more that's going to advance our work from where we were from the last strategic plan. So I'm super excited at what this strategic plan is going to give us an opportunity to do.
That was my next question. Do you also feel the same way, that it's a lot better than 5, 7, 8 years ago, whenever it was?
I do. We've learned a lot since then, right? And we've learned how to truly embrace innovation and to do it right. And the thing that we keep coming back to, so before and after every one of these days, I always have quite a bit of time to sit with Dr. Noyola. And we really think about, like, where are we? Kind of like on a scale from 1 to 10, but where are we? And is this really where we need to be? And I will tell you that I do feel a lot better, because the other part that we're already looking at is, how are we going to, number 1, bring the design teams together? Number 2, how are we going to make sure that we're quantitatively measuring our success? So I feel a lot more comfortable in that space. I think that with the model that Engage has brought and the things that we've learned these last few years, we're able to do that better now. And the other thing too is that we have evolved a lot as leaders since 2013, when we did our last strategic plan. And several of us are still in the organization. And I think back to our conversation then, and I think to our conversations that we had this time, and in particular with our strategic planning committee, and we're able to ask the right questions. We know how to ask, and we know how to push, and so that is very different. And the other thing that I'll say, the last thing I'll say, is that there's, I think, a lot to be said for well-being, right? This plan is about well-being for all. And if you're going to address well-being with the little ones and the big ones and the community, that's exactly where our society is right now. Like they need to know that they have that reassurance. And so I'm excited about Goal 2. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears with Goal 2. Very happy and very proud of where we ended up with that.
And then last question about logistics going forward, and I know maybe this will evolve, but with the design teams, help me just at a high level understand how you're going to do that, not with any specificity or anything. And then how much of this is ink versus pencil? In other words, I guess the goals are ink. They're going to be set for the next. Sure. Are the specific results also kind of like more ink kind of in? And then can you add specific results? Or no, that all the rest of the work just comes from the design teams? Can you help me understand that?
Sure. So the model that we have calls for when we come in February, we all would adopt the goals and the specific result statements. What you don't adopt that is flexible are the action items that fall under those specific results statements. And that's why when you study these specific results statements, that's the feedback that we're asking for now. Are they broad enough to give us permission to innovate, number one? And number two, are they going to stand the test of time? And we always come back to that. And so logistically, that's what the board will adopt. The other part of our conversation that I had with Dr. Nayela is that lessons learned, we're going to have a formal training for people that sit on a design team, because there's something to be said for the mindset of innovation. You're just not a natural born innovator, like we're going to jump in and do all this. It's an art. And so we are already working on the training component of the design teams, because we know that as soon as we adopt it, the organization has to feel something different. And we're working on that part of the communication plan as well.
One of the other things that we're adding to this process that we learned along the way off of the first strategic plan is staying true to the intent of what the strategic plan was designed around. And so sometimes as people come and go, and you're not always going to have this strategic plan committee there saying, hey, but wait a second, this specific result was really about this and not this other piece. We are going to go through a process where we're going to visit with each of these, the strategic plan committee goal teams, and talk a little, we're going to videotape them and say, talk to us about what this goal was and why you chose these specific results and so forth, so that we always stay true to what the intent is, that we can share it with the design teams and say, look, you're working on this particular design or goal and specific result. Let me remind you, let me make sure that you know what this was about, so that as you proceed with the designing process, you always have that lens of the strategic plan committee.
Other comments, questions?
I have just a couple. So first, I appreciate the taking into account the feedback and the redesign of the goals. I like them. I think they read really well. I think they encompass a lot of what we discussed at the last meeting and the feedback. And then I know we asked about how you all were feeling. What about, I mean, is it okay to ask, like, what about the facilitators? What about Engage? Like, what is their...
See Dr. Neela smiling. So our facilitator, when I met her, I started laughing. I said, so has anybody told you about Harlingen? And she said, oh yeah, we're super excited. We're excited to be here. And I said, okay, so that aside, have they also told you that we don't always fit the mold of the model? And she laughed again and she said, they have. So her feedback this last time, I think at the end of the second day, she got a little emotional with us, because she said she had never seen a group that had made their way through so much of the work with quality in that kind of timeline. so much so that we could even modify our timeline. And then this last time when she left and I talked to her a little bit about what we did with the senior team yesterday, they were really interested in knowing what other steps we were going to take, because they think that they can learn a lot from the dynamics and from the model that we have here. She's very, very comfortable with where we ended up. She likes that our board gives us permission to refine as we need to, and that the strategic plan committee allows that too. Because she did share, sometimes you have these strongholds and you can't push through. And so the plan becomes the voice of very few. She said it's a very different dynamic here. Even with 3 board members in the room, we're able to really do a lot. But she has said she's interested in, when this is all over, like watching how we document our progress, because some of that, the last time, they took our model and made it part of, embedded it in their work. It's just a different, we always act surprised. But every time somebody comes in here, they're like, where is the rest of the organization? Like, where is the not so good part? And we're like, this is it, this is us, like the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we're very transparent and authentic. And that's not typically the case.
I think the other thing that they really highlighted was the large degree of community involvement in this process. They were amazed that there was so many people from so many parts of our community that were involved in this process, and how we really, as we move forward, are always taking that lens of our community in the work that we do. Because I heard it from both of them, that they talked about, we're just shocked that there are so many people that are part of this process, and just the greatness that comes when you involve all of your stakeholders in planning out the future of a school district.
And kudos to Shane and his team, because I forgot that we are the top survey getter, participant yes. They've never had another group that has had that many, but he just pushed and pushed and pushed, and so kudos to him.
So one last thought, and you may want to think about this, because I was thinking the same thing about the survey. And I don't know the number. Do we know the number? Last time we had a number like 800.
800,
Is it about the same?
about
800?
800.
Okay. So when we get to like 1,000 or anyway, it's okay.
It was we started at 800, and we were so excited about 800 plus, like almost 1,000. We're at over 4,000 now.
So
So that's a lot.
the only sort of, I guess, blind spot in that survey deal, because the numbers were impressive, but the only blind spot was the graduates. Feedback
Yes.
from recent recent graduates, right? I mean, I know Bobby's there, but that doesn't count, right? But
We got that response and we printed it. We were good.
We really
No.
looked at that.
So is there time, I know holidays and this, that, the other way,
Sure.
between now and adoption, to get like 20, 30,
Sure.
and send them like, hey, we're going through this process. Here's what we come up with our, our goals and our specific results. Any
yeah.
thoughts, any this, any that? Because I think if I remember quickly, there were only like 7. I remember that number, but I don't know if it's right or not. But it was only 7. I was like, why can we get more of that? So if we can get like 30 or 40, and I'm thinking about this because this morning, right, I was at the UT System building, had a meeting with the chancellor, and I came across something on my LinkedIn, or I don't know if it was LinkedIn, on Friday of last week, some feed from Texas 2036. And it had to do with a story about this policy advisor that works for Texas 2036 on higher ed. And his kind of specialization is community colleges, right? And I'm like, that's Lorenzo Soto. I don't know if y'all remember Lorenzo Soto. He was very involved with, a lot of the speech trauma debate kind of things, that kind of stuff. Very involved. Anyway, so he graduated in 2014. And I'm like, and he was, I kind of mentored him, met him a few times, great kid. And so I texted him, I sent him a screenshot of that deal. I said, super proud, congrats, whatever. And he goes, hey, Dr. Pettis, great to hear from you. He's like, hey, just so you know, I office out of the UT System building. So next time you're here, whatever. I'm like, I'm there on Tuesday. Let's have coffee. And so we met this morning, right? Yeah. And I thought, this is the kid you should reach out to. Now, this is a guy is a policy advisor for Texas 2036. Like, he has, lunch with Margaret Spellings every week, I mean, I'm thinking, like, how cool is that, right? This kid is a graduate from HCISD. So I'm thinking like there's got to be a way to get some input from recent graduates. And if we have some time, it'd be awesome. And now that we have some sort of more of a product, we're not just like, tell us we're asking them like, hey, this is goal
Right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
Poke holes in it, add whatever, just what do you think, you know? And I bet we'll come up with some cool things that you guys
Sure.
can figure out a way if you want to add some more specific results or not. I mean, you guys will
Right, and
So-
if for nothing else, for action items, right? Because those
Yeah.
two are super important.
And so I think you mentioned two keywords, recent graduate, and so coincidentally, we have a recent graduate luncheon coming
Right.
up here on the 22nd, and so
Yeah.
that's a perfect time for us to take these questions, because I think it'll allow for more interaction anyway. To take some of our strategic plan goals and results and get that feedback, throw in some of the questions that were in the survey. But I think it's a perfect time, because we'll have a good little number of
Use it
students.
as leverage. Do you want to eat? Throw it out.
Yeah, tell us what you think, right?
good stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Corton. It is a very exciting process. All right, Mr. Cavazos, will you take us through the financial strategic planning?
Members,
Make more money.
we wanted to update the committee on the financial side of strategic planning. We do understand that some of these new strategies and innovations might require some funding. So as we look at our finances, we need to look at our current outstanding debt and potential new revenue sources. We do have our financial advisors, Dr. Miguel de los Santos and Bobby Villarreal from Estrada Hinojosa, our financial advisors, to present a report on our debt. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Dos Santos and Bobby.
Welcome, thank you for being
Thank you
here.
very much. Mr. Cavazos, thank you very much. Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Noyola, and Dr. Veronica, congratulations. She didn't have a doctorate the
Yeah,
last time I
right.
saw her, so. I'm sorry.
Is it on the screen?
Yeah, it's right there.
She's registered at one of the stores. I forget what's that store for gifts. What I don't remember the red. I'm kidding. Okay.
I guess that's it.
I was commenting to Bobby, we were hired a couple of years ago as your financial advisors, and both times that we had the opportunity to come before you, I was somewhere else. There's three of us, and we were all at different places the same night, so this is the first time that I have an opportunity to visit with you. My name is Miguel de los Santos. I've been with Estrada Hinojosa for 26 years, and very, very good years. I wouldn't have stayed that long if it wasn't a premier firm as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, with that, we met with the superintendent and with Mr. Cavazos, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago, just to give him an update on the current situation, current financing status of the school district with reference to school facilities, which is different than the M&O, which it comes to the table on a meeting per meeting basis. So with me, Bobby Villarreal, he's the one that had been representing our company the last couple of times that we were before you in a couple of refinancings or refundings of bonds. We're here simply to share some information for you. There is a page there where I talk about bond elections. We're not coming to say bond election or anything. These are methods of funding or financing school facilities that we're going to talk about a little bit. And we're going to talk about the debt that you currently hold and where it is and how much you paid your debt down and when you're going to pay some more debt off and so on. And then we're going to talk about two other possibilities that are, well, the TRE is not new. It's new in that the legislation that now governs TREs is totally different than when you did in 2013. And then the other is something that is new to the school district anyway, and new to some other school districts. We haven't done it very much in the past, but the time is appropriate to look at it and consider it, and that is to defease debt, to use M&O funds to pay off debt early instead of waiting the 30 years or whatever. So those are the concepts we're going to share with you today. The first item that we have is that besides cash and grants and gifts to the school district for facility purposes or any other purposes. The main ways to finance schools is one, general obligation bonds. In the last 20 years, 30 years, the school district has passed two major bonds. We'll talk about those in a little bit, tell you where you were and where you are now. Maintenance tax notes. In 2018, the school district borrowed approximately $10 million, I believe, through maintenance tax notes. And the Public Facilities Corporation. This district also has experience with that, where the board forms a Public Facilities Corporation. The Public Facilities Corporation borrows money through bonds, builds the facilities, leases them to the school pays the corporation makes the payments on the bonds. And at the end of the lease, then the papers are signed over to the school district. That's the way the law works. If you look at the page 2, general obligation bonds, the way that I'd like to lay this one out is it's a refresher for some of you and is new to some of you, because I know that we have some new board members that may not have experienced this particular item. But the most traditional way that school districts borrow is through general obligation bonds. And the way that works is that you go out to the community with a proposal of projects and amounts, and then the school district, the community either says yes or no, and that's really the end of that one. So they're voter approved. The advantages of these bonds are that interest rates are generally lower because they are guaranteed by the Permanent School Fund, which is a Texas education agency, brings you a AAA rating. You go to the market with a AAA rating. They're also very popular with investors because they're tax-free. The interest that investors earn is tax-free. So as a consequence, there's always an interest in these kinds of bonds in the market. They are paid from the INS side of the tax rate. You have a 14, I think it's 1480?
14.8.
14.8 is your INS tax rate. And that tax rate, whatever you collect with that, can be used only to pay debts that were incurred by the vote, or general obligation bonds. You can't use them for what you collect there. You can't use it for anything else except pay debt. As a matter of note, in the general obligation, in the INS fund, you have those 15 cents. They collect about $7 million, a little bit over $7 million that you use to pay your debt that you have. You also, over the years, have accumulated approximately $11 million. So you have a fund balance in the INS, which is very healthy. And the only thing that you can do with that fund balance is pay debt. You can't pay teachers, you can't do anything except pay debt. You can't even build another building and pay it with that fund. You can only pay debt. So that's why one of the items that Bobby's going to talk about in a minute may be of interest to you in that respect. So those are basically the, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically the concepts that are taken into consideration when we work with school districts on, or not only school districts, but other entities in financing through GO bonds. The second way that school districts borrow money is maintenance tax notes. Maintenance tax notes are short-term. The GO bonds are 30 years. Maintenance tax notes are generally 10 years. The max that I've seen personally is 15 years. And usually a school district will have a project that they want to do, or something that needs to be fixed or improved or renovated. And I don't know exactly what you did with the $10 million, but you borrowed $10 million in 2018 as maintenance tax notes. The only thing that you can use maintenance tax notes for is to improve on current facilities. You can't go build a new facility with maintenance tax notes. So the only time a district is going to borrow according to maintenance tax notes is to renovate or to improve the facilities that you have. The thing about maintenance tax notes,
What was that in 2018 that we used it on? Do you know?
We renovated some additional facilities. That's when we had Treasure Hills Elementary.
That's, okay, got it.
Yeah, so we used, part of that to renovate, the other facilities as well.
And then the last thing, before I lose my thought, is there was another situation, it was another program or something that came up for school health professions. Remind me what that was
Yeah,
again?
those are qualified school construction bonds, and we did that in 2013. And those are through the public facility corporations, and they'll talk a little bit
Okay,
about
got
that.
it, got it.
Yeah, that'll be the
Okay.
third major item. The maintenance tax notes, of course, are paid from the maintenance and operations side of the tax rate, which people shy away from because in essence, you're taking that $1 million payment that you're making right now is being taken out of, but you're very healthy M&O. I mean, you don't have to worry about there either. The third is the Public Facilities Corporation. The question Dr. Pettis is asking Mr. Cavazos. In 2013, this board voted to create a Public Facilities Corporation, and the board of the Public Facilities Corporation is the board. Maybe reorganized a little bit, but it's a board. And that board, through bylaw, has the opportunity to go out and borrow, do bonds, and they are guaranteed. They're not guaranteed by the public school, permanent school fund, but they do get state support. So it's a good way to borrow money without doing a bond election. We don't generally recommend that. We usually, whenever our clients ask, we usually say, well, take it to the people first and see what they say. You know, they have general obligation bonds or the most transparent way to finance. But there are some situations where districts have felt like, you know, it's a little bit faster. We don't have to go to the people. We're not going to borrow that much, whatever the circumstances may be, and it's used that way. I have only worked on one, which was Brownsville, and as an underwriter, one in Edinburgh. And then there was one where both of those that we took out later on with general obligation bonds when the districts decided to go and do a bond election. Those, the downside of those is that you pay them out of your M&O side, which cuts into some of the programs or the things that you want to do for maintenance and operations, teacher salaries, buses, whatever it takes to operate. But they are a way to fund facilities and do them through a non-election kind of way, depending on the needs. All of this is depending on the needs of the school districts.
So it's just a little history on that 2013. So in 2010, we had gone to the voters for the $98.6 million. So the qualified school constructions bonds came into effect around 2012. Instead of going out to the voters again, the board elected to do, the financing through the Public Facility Corporation. When we did borrow these monies, they were a very low interest rate because it was subsidized by the federal government. So, I think it was like net 1% rate.
Oh, that's right, that is
So,
correct. Yeah.
Yep.
They were, yeah, you ended up with like almost a 0%.
Yeah, very low.
I mean, they come up for refunding and you can't refund them because the interest rates are never going to be as low as what you got in the first place, so. On the next page, we have actually the recent GO bond history. And you'll notice that the bottom part is the one you did in 1999. In 1999, this district had a bond election, and you borrowed $80 million, $80,270,000. And we tried to get the vote for that one. We couldn't get the vote. But in 2010, you did another bond election, major election for $98,600,000. Just for fun, we put in there that the people in Harlingen, or the voters in Harlingen, voted 59% to 41% to pass those bonds. And I don't know exactly what projects you have done, but I know that you've done a lot of good works with them throughout. The next page shows that 98 million. Yes, sir.
Are you gonna, I guess maybe if you're gonna get into it later, that's fine, but what year does that one get paid off entirely? The 1999, and how many pennies, más o menos, is that gonna
Yeah.
add to us?
So they're going to go.
Are you gonna go over that? Okay, sorry.
Yeah, good question.
Sorry, go ahead, no, go ahead.
That's a good question. And that's this page and the following
No,
one.
keep going, sorry, Doctor.
And then on this next page where you have general obligation outstanding debt, if you will look at the last two lines there in the top square where it says unlimited tax refunding bond series 2020, those are your 2010 bonds. We refunded them in 2020. They were refinanced because the interest rates were better, and I think the district saved about $11 or $12 million in interest. But out of those 98 million, you now owe 59 million. So you've paid down considerably on those in the last 12 years. The ones that are 2015, right below that, were original 1999 bonds. And those were $80 million that you borrowed, and that particular financing is down to $24 million. So if you look at the bottom where we have the bar graph, and if you look at 2030, from 2030 to 2031, you have that big drop, you drop below the line. That's when your 1999 bonds go away.
Okay.
And they have been in your books for basically 30 years. And at that point, you will save approximately $3.7 million in payments that you make currently on those bonds. A reminder that about 27% of that is state support, and the other 75% comes out of your taxes. So it'll be a considerable savings.
So it's about 6 or 7 cents, more or
3
less.
million, yeah, about 6-7 cents will come off your tax rate. That's a time that a board generally will say, hey, maybe it's time to consider a bond. I mean, we have 6 cents that are going to go away. And by that time, you'll need probably some improvements on your facilities. So whenever you have dips is when boards will look at, or we recommend that boards look at them. So, and then right after, a couple of years after that, you have another dip with about $600,000 going away, and that's about a penny and a half on your tax roll. So it looks good for Harlingen ISD in terms of what you have borrowed, what you have done with what you have borrowed, and where you are in relation to the large amounts of money that you borrowed 10 and 20 years ago. Bobby is going to talk about maintenance tax notes and a couple of other items that we have.
Thank you, Board, committee members. Again, Bobby Villarreal for the record. And again, just taking from the general obligation, we're looking at the maintenance tax notes, which of course come from the M&O side of payments. Like I think Mr. Cavazos mentioned, y'all had borrowed about 10 roughly a few years ago in 2018. Right now you owe about 5.1 million. It's non-callable, but as you can see, it's about $1,145,000 a year payment, and that'll drop off and get paid off in 2028. And of course, just about every penny is roughly 400,000 and change. So that's probably almost about 3 pennies close on the M&O side. And so again, also going over to the Public Facilities Corporation, like Mr. Cavazos mentioned, there was a borrowing of $13.9 million back in 2013. The call date on that is in 2023, but like you mentioned, they're heavily subsidized, so we generally don't refund those because it just won't work for you. The second one, the 2007s, they mature in 2038. However, I think in discussions with Mr. Cavazos and bond counsel, these are going to get reset, so maybe.
So the interest rate on these are going to get reset, and it's not very, a big amount, but I mean, that's an opportune time to get these paid off if you wanted to. We owe $1.9 million on the 2007, and so in discussion with the bond counsel, it might be a good opportunity to pay those bond off, and they come off the books. So we appropriate about $400,000 per year per payment. If we do that, that money comes back to the M&O, and we can use that for different things. Of course, we would have to, pay that out of our fund balance, and we have a good fund balance that we possibly could do that. We're discussing that, and we'll bring a recommendation to the board here in the next couple of months.
Awesome.
And then going on to the next slide, this is just a historical representation of what the district has done for the past 10 years. So as you can see, in the past 10 years, you were at about 121, 131.8, I think in 2019, and then it decreased to 121, and has continued to decrease down to 1.15 pennies. And if you notice, much of the compression has happened on the M&O side. The INS has remained fairly level. So it's been those compressions, and that's something that we wanted to speak about in reference to what's possible and what other districts are considering doing. So just something to talk about, a defeasance or an early payoff of outstanding debt. So in a defeasance transaction, bonds can be paid off as they mature before their call date. So what we would do is we would analyze to determine which particular maturities in particular bonds or would be most advantageous for you to defease early. And the steps would be, and it would probably be probably before budget adoption. So we would have time to discuss it and talk about it. But essentially, bond counsel would prepare it, and you would have a resolution that says that you may increase the INS rate or commit an INS fund balance to defease certain bond maturities in whole or partially defeased. And to have a cash defeasance, it would require that the district fund an escrow to pay the interest payments on the bonds until the call date. And so once they're defeased, they're off the district's books. So defeasing essentially allows you to create some capacity now rather than later, because if you go back to that previous slide, let me see if I can head back to the general obligation. So as you remember, those particular years all the way to 2030, it's level. So the thought process is it for argument's sake, if you have a two penny compression come out again, that's roughly $860,000 of revenue. So you could compress the M&O side, but you could increase that INS side by the 2 pennies. Those 14 pennies would continue to pay the existing debt, and then those 2 pennies would go into an escrow and allow you to perhaps knock down some of those bars so you can create some capacity where those bars start to come down. And so you're not waiting to finance something or to execute a need that's, you may have the need in 3 years instead of 7 years. So that's the concept of it. And the district, of course, while they're doing that, essentially would save interest payments as well over time.
So Bobby, let me understand this. So, we only have one fund balance, right?
Well, we have
But
our-
it just happens to be some of that fund balance is on the INS side, right? Contributed to the INS side and the others, is that correct or no?
Well, we have a fund balance for debt service to pay our voter-approved debt, and then we have our general fund balance,
Okay,
right?
so earlier you were talking about using some of the general fund balance to maybe pay off some debt, but you're talking about using our INS fund balance, correct?
Yeah. Well, if you go back, so right now the M&O tax rate's $1 roughly, and the INS is 14 pennies, or roughly 15. So essentially, for argument's sake, if next year your compressions turn out to be 98, you would move the 114 or 115, the 15 up to 17. Overall, same tax rate, taxpayers see the same
Got it.
bill, but you're paying down some debt. You're lowering those bars of payments you're having, and it could create the capacity of thinking, you know what, we may be able to finance or do something with those dollars. And it could be you don't do it that year, you might do compressions and defeasances for the next 2 or 3 years, and it creates enough capacity.
But it's creating more operational money, in a sense, because you're not having to pay off this debt anymore, and now you, so I guess, what are the limits that you could, I guess you can use, can you use every last cent of the INS fund balance, or no? What are the limits of what you can use to pay down that, and where is the magic sweet spot to where you say, well, you wouldn't do beyond this or beyond that, and would you all recommend using fund balance to pay off some debt as well, or just INS balance?
Probably the INS, but I would think you probably want to hold on to some portion of it.
You could use, when Bobby's talking about compression, Julio comes to you guys every year and he says, we've been compressed down by the state. In other words, you don't have any, they set a maximum tax rate that you can have by state. And in your case right now, it's about 86 cents. And then you add, I think you're adding like 11 or 12, 13 cents maybe, to that from your old TRE. And you're using some of that money, like $10 million a year, as your building fund, if you will. If you have whatever amount you have in fund balance in the INS side, if you have $11 million and you say, well, we don't need $11 million, it's sitting there. Where those come in handy is for reducing your debt now, or you can use them, in some cases we're using them with school districts, so that the first year or two, when they pass a bond election, we make the payments out of there, because they can pay bonds out of there. And as a consequence, we were able to keep the tax rate, and then we structure it so that the tax rate is minimal, almost to zero in many cases, in the beginning because they have a healthy fund balance. So that's one thing you can do. You can look at $11 million divided by 400,000, and it's going to give you about, you have like, what, 15 cents of capacity there maybe? No more than that.
Yeah, probably a little bit more than that, but yeah, our debt service fund balance, and the reason that we have that is that, we're at June 30 year end. So our bond
That
debt is
also.
due, it's payable in August. So that $11 million, won't, it's gone
Oh,
in
okay.
August. Because we pay that debt in August, and then we bill it back again for the next year. It's not to say that we can't use it, we can, but we'll have to kind of leverage some money.
You're catching up with it
Yes,
year to
we'll be
year.
catching up.
Yeah. You're ahead of the game with the money you have there. The other is the 2 cents that Bobby's talking about on the compression. All he's saying is you keep your tax rate where it is. Those 2 cents is gonna raise you $900,000. You put them on the debt, the tax rate stays the same. It doesn't hurt your M&O because you were gonna give them away. And we always use a statement of, a penny to my house of $300,000 is $30 a year. But to you guys, it's $400,000 a year. So, but those are decisions that are made by the board. If the board decides that you want to move in any direction, we're at your service in terms of preparing all kinds of numbers, working with Mr. Cavazos and staff.
So we wanted to have the discussion with the board. I mean, there's plenty of time to discuss and make a recommendation as we move forward. But, in shifting the compression pennies over to the INS, we're telling the voters, look, we're moving the pennies over, but we're paying off some debt, right? And that's the reason that we're moving it over. And so that's a good, message to the community. We're paying off some debt and keeping the same tax rate.
Right. Any other questions or comments?
I think you're not done with your
Right.
you were going to go through the,
Few more
Yeah, we got
things?
one more.
Okay.
So, again, another option that is out there is a voter-approved voter-approved tax rate election. And that's essentially to increase the M&O pennies to maximize state funding. I think y'all did this in the past, and I think there's still about 3.17 pennies available to the district. It requires a successful election, an efficiency audit with specific guidelines and actions, meeting to discuss the results of the efficiency audit, and of course, a uniform general election to vote on that. That requires it being called 78 days prior to the November election, which is somewhere around August, I think. Again, simple majority wins. I guess to discuss that further, I guess I'll defer to Miguel on that one.
Yeah, on that, on the TRE, 3.7 cents on the M&O side are very, very valuable to the school district. 3.17 cents to the school district, and it had to go to the public like it went in 2013. And if it was passed, those 3.7 cents would raise you in local taxes about $1.5 million. Then the state would match you at very big numbers, and the reason for it is this. Those are called enhancement or enrichment pennies. They're called copper pennies in the system. Those will pay you on WADA, weighted ADA versus ADA. Your ADA is 16,000 approximately students. Your WADA is 23,000 students. So you have 7,000 more heads that are going to get $50 apiece for every penny that you have. So now you're getting 1.4 locally or 1.2 locally, but the state is going to give you approximately $3.5 million. So it's something for consideration. It's, I know Mr. Cavazos, we've discussed it, and it's something that districts are considering in order to now, there are some steps. The legislature, state government is trying to make it as difficult as possible for school districts and other entities to raise any kind of property taxes. In fact, every effort is to lower the property taxes. And that's fine and dandy. But you have to operate, and you have to operate at levels that you feel comfortable with and so on. So again, it's a decision of the board. We don't get involved with that. We're not we know the formulas and we can work out numbers and all that, but that's not something that we do as expertise. We're on the INS side, but there are some firms out there that do it, and very professional. I don't know if Mo Casey helped you the last time or who
No,
helped you.
we did it ourselves.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I'm sure your counsel helped you out. We suggest local counsel or bond counsel or a firm. Well, Julio
Yeah.
will do it for you. He'll be a
Yeah, so
consultant.
the TRE, this is the same thing that we did in 2015, and that's when we were able to leverage the state dollars, when we went to the voters and basically say, look, our, 13 pennies is going to generate this much, and then the state's going to kick in another 60%. Similar situation with this new TRE, which is since House Bill 3, about 4 years ago, that came into effect, school districts were able to, even though they had passed a TRE, they're able to do another TRE, and the max for us that we can generate another 3.17 pennies, but it's just another option to generate some additional revenues.
Well, and I remember exactly, it was 4.2 million of local tax effort. It was 10 cents, we raised the tax rate 10 cents, you saw it, you showed it earlier, and so, and it was, I guess, about 420,000, because it was 10 cents, and it ended at 4.2 million for local tax, and we got 5.8 million annually from the state match.
Yeah.
So-
And the whole reason is the state pays you on heads, kids that come to school. And when they're paying you on 23,000 instead of 16,000, you're obviously going to make a lot more money, so. But they won't do it for you unless the people, the voters say, we're okay with it. That's the thing that boards need to talk about.
What's the, so if we were back at 18,000 like we were a couple of years ago, what would be the state's proportion? I mean, we're at 16,000, it's 23,000 for the way they compute it. What would it be if we had 18,500 like we used to have?
The 23,000 is what we call weighted ADA.
Right.
In other words, they give you a weight for special ed kids and for vocational education kids, bilingual education kids, and so on, so it adds up. If you had 18,000, off the top of my head, maybe you would have a 26,000.
There's
WADA.
there's a formula they use to
Yeah.
calculate it?
Well, it depends on the students that need to be, that are weighted.
Yeah,
The regular education child will get a 1.
Yeah,
and then-
the special
and then-
education, the bilingual, so all those weights come into play. So yeah, it would be about 26,000.
Yeah, it would add considerably more.
The delta between the two is probably $1 million, $1.2 million, $1.3 million.
But we wanted to, again, just present this to the committee, and appreciate the financial advisors coming here and presenting the report, and just some options that we have as we move forward.
Yes, thank you so much. And, as always, we appreciate your advice. We rely and are very thankful for Mr. Cavazos and your whole team, because without to look at this gives us options. We're not in a position of fear and crisis.
No, you're in good shape.
Right, we're in great shape, and we can then think about possibilities. And so, thank you for your leadership. So, truly appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We're at your service.
Very informative, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And like, you haven't been here, but I keep telling them that I found my wife here. They educated her. All the pretty girls in Falfurrias were my cousins, so I had to come get a girl from Arlington.
That's right. You got a good one, too, right?
So, we just felt it was critical to bring this forward, on the heels of Veronica's presentation of strategic planning and it being innovative and thinking big. Sometimes thinking big comes with some costs. And so knowing what our debt looks like and what our opportunities are, really give us that flexibility to truly be innovative and look at what may come from our strategic plan. So just real quickly on the last agenda item with future topics. So we've talked about strategic planning, we talked about financial planning. The other caveat that we want to bring to the board is the demographic study. And so we hope that we will have that data here in January. So provided that we are able to get that report back, we'd like to bring the demographic study results back to the board, hopefully in January. The other piece that we are looking at right now is the accountability system. And so the state is going through a lot of changes on what that's going to look like. And so we want to update the board on just what some of those potential changes are. And so we will bring those in January and share with the board what that's looking like, as well as how our students are doing on their assessments thus far, just to give you an idea on where we're at with that performance.
Great. As always, those sound like just what we need to hear. So thank you, everybody, for the great discussion. We stand adjourned.